What is up everyone, and welcome to some more F1 23 My Team Career Mode. Last time out we were at the USA Grand Prix in Texas, and despite the fact that I qualified exceptionally well, I got my 4th pole position in a row. We had a mechanical failure in the sprint, and then I made the blunder to end all blunders in the race itself. I forgot to change the engine component between the sprint and the race, the one that failed in the sprint, and it meant that we suffered another mechanical failure during the race. Was it avoidable? 100%, and we probably could have come back through the field to grab some points as well. And for this reason, I am going to do more reliability upgrades, because we currently have the worst reliability package on the grid by a country mile, and it's really time for us to start investing in that sooner rather than later, I think, so we don't have any more oopsies when it comes to reliability. So I'm hoping that for the first time in God knows how long, with the possible exception of the Japanese Grand Prix, we're going to go an entire weekend without having a mechanical failure. Yeah, I'm trying to think to myself. It's been, I want to say, 7 mechanical failures over the course of the last 8 or 9 Grand Prix now, which is kind of ridiculous, really. And I know one of them was technically my fault, but it's still an absolutely absurdly high number to experience, and I'm very, very frustrated about it, and I want to put this issue to bed, put it in the past, and hopefully we can end the season off strongly, maybe try and reclaim 6th in the Constructors Championship, although we will need nothing short of a miracle at this point. McLaren are about 50-something points ahead of us, and honestly, at this point, with how dominant McLaren have been looking this season, I think the more likely outcome, as unlikely as it is that we might be able to catch Haas in the Constructors Championship, despite the fact that they're about 60 points ahead of us in the Constructors. They're not gaining points anywhere near as quickly as McLaren are. So we've done a few upgrades, and we've also had an upgrade from the folks over at Renault, who provide our power units, so I'm hoping that we should be able to have at least a halfway decent race here. Realistically, we need to be finishing no lower than the podium in every single race from now on, which, with the performance that we've been displaying over the course of the season, should, theoretically speaking, be possible. However, it doesn't seem to be as easy as that for whatever reason. You know, we've had, what, 4 pole positions in a row? We haven't been off pole position since Monza. That was the last time we didn't get pole in a qualifying session, at least. We got pole in Singapore, in Japan, in Qatar, and in Texas. So that is 4 pole positions in a row. Realistically, Brazil is one of my strongest tracks on the calendar, I would say. And so I think it's very, very likely that we have a pretty good chance of getting pole position here as well. And that's kind of what we're going to need, really. We're going to need pole position, we're going to need a big result in the sprint, and we're going to need a big result in the race as well. And if we don't get those, then I think we can kiss goodbye to P6 in the Constructors Championship already. We, of course, have 2 more races left to come. We've got Portugal, which is going to be the next race. I've discovered at last. It's definitely going to be Portugal next. And then Las Vegas to end off the season. It was potentially looking good for me in qualifying, because in practice I topped the session, but here's the really interesting thing. I topped the session on medium compound tyres. Now I know what you're thinking. The 2 guys below me were also on medium compound tyres. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but usually my pace on mediums is nowhere near as imperious as my pace on softs when it comes to practice sessions, especially because, you know, I'll be doing things like ERS management. I kept trying to say tyre and fuel management at the same time there, and it just kind of came out like the sound of like a Star Wars laser pistol or something like that. But anyway, yeah, tyre and fuel management, you know, not representative pace lap times, if that makes sense. And even in the race strategy ones, I don't always use the entire battery. So yeah, actually looking pretty good for us there, considering we didn't do the quali pace program because we weren't pushing flat out. So hopefully we're going to be gunning for our 5th pole position in a row. We are the new Charles Leclerc of Formula 1. But I mean, first of all, we have to try and actually get the pole position before we can make that claim, of course. But we are on a fresh set of soft compound tyres in here for Q1. It is a 1:08.5, and I would wage to say that that lap time is not really going to be good enough. That was about as good as our best lap time on the mediums in practice. So we're going to need to improve on that a little bit. And we go out on another fresh set of soft compound tyres. We're currently in P12. But we are improving by 0.6 on this occasion. We probably could have made it through even without going on the second set of tyres, but it's okay. We improve up to a 107.8, and that is good enough to see us through to the following session in P1. So that's brilliant. Now, here's what's slightly concerning about that. I was sandbagging. I accidentally loaded up my car with way too much fuel for both of those runs. So if I'm getting that kind of time with extra fuel, then God knows what I'm capable of. The eliminations here are Joe, Hulkenberg, Stroll, Fittipaldi, De Vries, and Dennis Hauger in a disappointing P22, considering that he's had a really strong run of form. You know, he made 2 Q2s in a row. I was hoping that at the very least, you know, he'd be sort of on the fringes of making it through to Q2, if not in Q2 itself. So, yeah, a little bit disappointed with that one, actually, from Dennis Hauger. But I still think that I'm going to go ahead and re-sign him for next season, because I think he's done just enough to impress me over the course of this season. You know, he's picked up a point, which is more than Fittipaldi managed in the previous season. And now here we are in Q2 on a used set of soft compound tyres, and we do a 107.3. I remembered to take the fuel out this time, which is good. And yeah, subsequently it meant even on a set of used tyres we were able to get into the low 107s. We actually didn't do another run there because I thought it was going to start raining, and so we made it through to Q3 in P2 because Norris did improve up to a 107.3, his teammate there in a 107.4 as well. And well, that is slightly worrying. If McLaren are putting in that level of performance, there's absolutely no way I'm going to catch them. The good news for us is that Magnussen joins Tsunoda, Gasly, Sainz, Albon and Sargent as the eliminations here. So yeah, feasibly we have a really strong chance of catching at least some of these teams in the Constructors Championship. Ferrari or Haas are probably looking like our best bet, because the Ferraris don't look particularly strong here either at the moment. And yeah, finally we have got through into Q3, and yeah, it looks like some rain might be coming at the end of this session, so we might only have time just for this lap. So I've done everything. I went out on a fresh set of soft compound tyres. You know, I haven't loaded up too high on fuel, anything like that. I'm just going on a maximum attack lap, see what kind of time I can do. The best times at the moment are in the low 107s, I believe, so we're going to do something quite special here. And we just about break into the 106s, which is a really good time, 106.9. And yeah, we should be on for pole position with that. And indeed, you can see that we're about 3/10 ahead of Sergio Perez there, which is a fantastic time for us. And yeah, it means that we will be bagging a 5th pole position in a row, which I am very happy with. No frantic engineer celebration this time, because it did start raining towards the end of the session. Actually, a little bit of a quicker qualifying that time than I'm used to. We only had to do 4 runs over the course of the entire 3 sessions, as opposed to our usual sort of 6 runs that we do. Usually do 2 runs in every session. And of course the reason we do that, for those of you who don't know, is because of a glitch in qualifying, where if you don't do a run at the end of the session, quite often the AI can do insanely unreasonable times. To the level that you'll just be like, how did they even manage to do that time? And really, they're not actually capable of doing those times. It's just the game kind of being like, haha, look at the AI, they're better than you are. But it's not legitimate. And if you want to avoid that happening, the best opportunity is to go out on the end of the session as well, when everyone else is going out. And it's, you know, you can even go out on a used set of tires. You don't need to take another fresh set or anything like that. You can just use a used set of tires. I do that quite often, but we didn't need to do that time because of the weather and all that kind of thing, so it's fine. But anyway, it is now time for us to get into the sprint for the Brazilian Grand Prix.
Forget pit stops, forget fuel management. It's pedal to the metal all the way here as we get ready for today's sprint. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting sprint. Robinson lines up on pole position, edging out Sergio Perez, who lines up P2. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Leclerc, Fernando Alonso, Bottas, Oscar Piastri, Verstappen, Norris, Ocon, Russell, Tsunoda, Gasly, Sainz, Albon, Magnussen, Sargent, Joe, Hulkenberg, Stroll, Fittipaldi, De Vries and Dennis Hauger. And with preparations almost complete, let's head trackside for today's sprint.
And as always in the lead up to the sprint, they choose not to say anything for whatever reason, which means I have a lovely time trying to fill time here. They're looking at Nick De Vries there again for whatever reason. Maybe he's going to have a good session today, I don't know. It doesn't seem like the AlphaTauri's been particularly competitive at all this season, and in the hands of De Vries and Albon, they've not really had many big finishes. I think Albon scored some good points here and there, but generally it's not been the strongest of seasons for them. But anyway, we have a reasonably solid chance of scoring big points here in the sprint, I would say. We can probably get at least a podium, I would say. Whether we can hold on to the victory, uncertain. I'll certainly try, of course. But yeah, if it doesn't quite work out the way that we want it to, it's not the end of the world. And yeah, we will just try and maximise the amount of points that we can score here. We have Sergio Perez behind us, who, to be honest with you, the Red Bulls have not been looking particularly dominant recently. It's more the Mercedes and Aston Martin show in terms of the teams with real pace, I would say. So I'm honestly thinking there's going to be Alonso and Bottas I'm going to have to worry about over the course of this race. But I could be wrong about that. You know, it could be Leclerc or Perez putting some pressure on as well. Theoretically speaking, our car is slower than all of these guys. So the fact that I'm even putting this car on pole position is kind of remarkable. But yeah, hopefully we can just do whatever we can to get a good result here. And yeah, I'm optimistic that we can score some good points. So we get ready to go now as the lights come on. And the lights go out, and Perez has not moved off of the start there. You can see he has dropped back so far already. Verstappen in P5 is already ahead of his teammate as well. We have gotten ahead of everyone. We are comfortably off the line. The only man who really could have challenged us down into turn 1 decided not to push the accelerator. So yeah, he's actually dropped all the way down to P10 by the looks of things. Both the Alpines and the McLarens have got him as well. So that is an absolutely terrible start for Sergio Perez. Maybe the worst start I have ever seen an AI do in this game. He lost 8 positions off the beginning of the race. That is absolutely unheard of. And yeah, we are comfortably leading under no real pressure at the moment. And yeah, we should be able to hold on to this P1 for at least the next few laps or so. Until maybe we come under pressure if they stay within DRS range or whatever. And you can see that lasted pretty well until lap 4, when Charles Leclerc decided he was going to challenge up the inside of me. I made sure to give him enough room to make sure there wasn't any contact. You know, the last thing I wanted was my race to end due to some kind of damage or anything like that. And what that meant was that Leclerc did end up sort of keeping his foot in and making the move up into P1. But on lap 6, we did have enough DRS and enough ERS to try and fight back at him. We're going to try and go round the outside of him on this occasion. And amazingly, we actually managed to make the move stick on at that time. But a little bit later in the lap, he does come back at us. He's going to have the DRS. You can see he's only a few tenths down on us already. And I'm sure with the DRS, he will be gaining on us very, very quickly as we come on the run. Down to turn 1, he's going to try and go up the inside here. And by the time he gets there, he's a full car length ahead already. He does actually move over to cover me off a little bit. And that wasn't great for my chances of staying in the fight, because it meant that I had to kind of take a bit of evasive maneuvers there. I probably could have tried and stayed with him a little bit more than I did. We almost came under pressure from Alonso as well, who had to back out a little bit. And yeah, now we're going to be coming under pressure from him potentially. However, we do catch back up with Leclerc pretty quickly after he does go for that questionable move into turn 1. And we seem to be close enough to him that maybe we can even try and go for a move. In fact, we're going to leave it very late, but we are going to send one to the inside of him. And somehow, I've managed to make that move stick. If you've ever seen me at Brazil before, you'll know I do love a move like that. And today seems to be no exception as we make our way back through to P1, which we held on to until lap 10 of the Grand Prix, when Leclerc started to come back at us a little bit more, and you can see that he's closing it down and coming to the inside at turn 1. Is he going to be able to make the move stick? He's certainly going for it, but I think on this occasion I'm just about going to be able to hold on to the position. And now, more than Leclerc worrying about trying to overtake me, he's got to worry about not getting overtaken by Bottas, who on lap 12 did manage to get ahead of not only him but also me. And I was thinking to myself, goodness me, am I about to lose this race on the final lap? But I decided, no, I'm not going to let it happen. And I kept my foot in, you know, I kept one tyre alongside his tyre, so he had to be cognizant of me, make sure he didn't turn too far across the corner. And that gave me just enough room to be able to squeeze my way back into P1. So I think we're going to be able to hold on to this. However, there is that big long straight at the end, and I wouldn't be the first YouTuber who's been pipped to the finish line at Brazil by a Mercedes in a sprint weekend before. I know it's a very specific set of circumstances, but it has happened to other people, believe me. So yeah, we round the final corner now, and as we come on the run down to the finish line, I've got 36% worth of battery to burn on the way to the line, but has Bottas got more? And crucially, is the DRS going to be enough to carry him 3/10 over these last few meters? It's going to be very, very close here, but he's just going to get ahead before the finish line. There's got to be less than a tenth in that. I was already celebrating across the line, and it's not even going to count for anything because it was actually a P2. It's also the sprint, so it doesn't matter necessarily too much. It's driver of the day for the man who went from P5 to P1, and we only walk away with 7 points on this occasion.
So let's have a look then at the drivers' standings. That lead at the top of the table has shrunk somewhat today. Well, that wraps up sprint. All that remains is the main event. We'll be live and uninterrupted for the Grand Prix tomorrow, so make sure you join us then.
Well, things are certainly heating up a little bit. McLaren do come away with a decent chunk of points there, but not a fantastic chunk of points. We do close them down a little bit, and we close down Haas as well. But more interestingly than that, perhaps, is the fact that George Russell and Fernando Alonso, with that result, are now tied on points in the championship. So it really is going to come down to who is stronger over the final 3 races of the season. Will it be the defending world champion George Russell, or will it be the 2-time world champion from almost 20 years ago at this point? He's retiring at the end of this season, no matter whether he wins the championship or not. Can he finally win that elusive 3rd championship in his final season in Formula One? You know, a career that spans 23 years, and I know he wasn't racing in every single year of those 23 years, but a career that spans 23 years in Formula One. Can he go out with a bang? He'll be starting ahead of George Russell for the Grand Prix, but there are 36 laps ahead of him, and there are 36 laps ahead of us to maybe try and mount an attack on Bottas and try and grab our first win since the Canadian Grand Prix earlier this season. Can we get our second win here? Can we get back at Haas and McLaren in the championship? Let's find out.
Welcome to where heroes and history are made. It's where the 2008 title was decided in the final corner, and just 1 year later, Jenson Button stormed through from 14th on the grid to claim his one and only Drivers' Championship. It's time then for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Interlagos, always a very special race here in Brazil, is a 2.7-mile circuit with 9 lefts and 6 rights for a total of 15 corners. The fastest lap today should have an average speed of around 135 miles per hour, if of course the weather stays dry until the end of the Grand Prix. It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. Valtteri Bottas lines up on pole position, and Robinson completes the front row. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Leclerc, Fernando Alonso, Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, Gasly, Norris, Perez, Russell, Sainz, Ocon, Tsunoda, Albon, Fittipaldi, Sargent, Stroll, Hulkenberg, Joe, De Vries, Hauger, and Kevin Magnussen fills the last spot on the grid. And with lights out just moments away, it's time to go down to the track. It's an absolute pleasure to be joined once again by Anthony Davidson. And we welcome Anthony Davidson to the commentary box. And we're looking at the champion. Can they relax, or are they going to be taking it as seriously as they did race 1?
I agree it's been a truly impressive season, but championship or no, I don't think they'll be gently cruising around to the finish line. In fact, with points no longer a concern, there's a lot less to risk, so we may even see a more aggressive approach.
Well, I don't know what they mean by champion. The voice lines in those intro cutscenes in this game are pretty broken, not going to lie to you guys. It definitely seems like maybe there's a little bit of improvement they can do to make them actually relevant a lot of the time, because a lot of the time they're just chatting absolute waffle, quite frankly. And this was a prime example of that. You know, the championship has never been tighter this season than it is right now, as the two title rivals are tied on points with just 3 races left to go. And you know, one of them is starting 4th today, George Russell. I'm not sure where he's starting actually. I think maybe 10th. by the looks of things. So he's going to have a big task on his hands if he wants to get through. And yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens as these 36 laps unfold. We're going to be starting on the medium compound tyres. Meanwhile, Bottas and Alonso here are going to be starting on the soft compound tyres, so they could potentially really ruin my day if I do manage to get the lead. But will I be able to do it as the lights come on? And the lights go out for the second time this weekend. Bottas, once again, it seems the other driver on the front row has just had an absolute standstill off the start. And Fernando Alonso has had a very strong start. He's already up 2 positions ahead of Leclerc and Bottas. And he is into P2. Bottas all the way down to P3. Verstappen holding station in P5, I believe. So that is your top 5 at the moment. Myself, from Alonso, from Bottas, from Leclerc, from Verstappen. But here comes Fernando Alonso diving up the inside at turn 1. Is he going to be able to make the move stick? No, he's not on this occasion. And we're going to be able to hold on to this P1 here in the Brazilian Grand Prix. But for how much longer? You know, from these 2 extremely experienced and talented soft compound runners behind me, there is, I would say, very little chance that I'm going to be able to hold on to the lead of this race for very long. I just think that they're going to have way too much pace. But I'm going to try and do everything I can to try and control the pace of this race, try and defend this position as hard as I can. I want this win. I need this win for the sake of the Constructors Championship, even P2. If I were to get P2s to the end of the season, that in itself might not be enough for me to be able to walk away with P6 in the Constructors Championship at the end of the season. It honestly, as amazing as it sounds, it could come down to a matter of 1 point from Dennis Hauger. You know, if he can score just a couple points this season in these last couple of races in Portugal and Vegas, and even here in Brazil today, there is every chance in the world that that might just be enough for us to finally make up that last position. But we will see. There is still an absolute mountain for us to climb, and things are not going to be easier if we can't hold on to P1 here in the Brazilian Grand Prix. We're coming under a lot of pressure from Fernando Alonso right now. You can see he's moving to the outside, and by the time we get to the corner, he is a very long way ahead of me, and there is no way for me to fight that back. We're going to try and fight him back, going through here into the DRS zone if we possibly can. And yeah, you can see that we managed to stay with him pretty well. We're only a couple tenths behind him. Should be a pretty trivial overtake with the DRS, I imagine, but he's so fast in a straight line compared to us. That is the power of an upgraded car versus a non-upgraded car. You can see we've basically got nothing going for us apart from our aero package, but there's one team on the grid last time I checked who are better than us in the aero department as well, and that is Aston Martin. So there's basically no way that we are on even footing with him whatsoever, but I go for my signature move, the one I went for on Leclerc a little bit earlier on in the sprint as well, and it just about pays off for us on this occasion, and that allows us to make our way back up into P1 in this Brazilian Grand Prix. But there are still almost 30 laps left to go, and it is still a very, very long way to the checkered flag, and it is going to be an immense amount of pressure coming out from these guys. So I'm going to need to do everything I can to defend as hard as I can, to maybe try and build a gap if I possibly can. The pit stop phase here today is going to be absolutely crucial if I want to break away from these guys, and that's about the only thing that's going to allow me to get away from them, I think, is if we nail the pit stops here today. But you know, we've had pit stop errors in the past. As you can see, Alonso's got back ahead of us, and we're trying to close him down once again. We're going to try and go to the inside here at the end of the DRS zone. We're going to dive down the inside, and are we going to make the move stick? Yes, we just about are, and that is Fernando Alonso back down into P2, but he's going to maybe go for a little bit more of a move around the outside, thinks better of it. That was a very wise decision from the experienced driver there. And yeah, actually it was a few more laps before we had another head-to-head battle here, but it did come eventually, and that was on lap 11 moving into lap 12. He was closing me down with the DRS. I didn't really perceive him as a threat, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he comes up the inside into the center S's. We're going to be going wheel to wheel through the S's, and he has to leave me a bit of space there, and that causes him to back out a little bit there, and he actually loses quite a lot of time. Not only does he lose time, but also Bottas, Leclerc behind him also lose a lot of time too. And well, I mean, with that alone, we've actually managed to break away by about a second or so. And if we can stay with this, which, you know, Bottas and Alonso battling there has allowed me to do, you can see that the gap as we come onto lap 15 is now 2 seconds. So as soon as I got out of their DRS range, all of a sudden I was flexing my superior pace here. You know, they obviously are on very used tyres at this point, and indeed they're so used that you can see that Fernando Alonso is actually coming into the pits to change onto a set of medium tyres, I would imagine, on which he is going to be going to the end of the race. And so I have decided that I actually think I'm going to box this lap, lap 16, rather than my actual planned box lap of lap 17. we're going to go in 1 lap early, because I think if Fernando Alonso gets 2 undercut laps on us, he will be able to make the move stick. And yeah, so we have no choice. We have to come into the pits now, otherwise that could cost us the lead of the race and potentially the win here today. So I just want to make sure that we can be absolutely certain that we're going to be all right. The gap to him was about 2 seconds beforehand. We will see what the gap turns out to be after we get through this pit stop phase. You can see things are going to be pretty close here. If you keep an eye on the Aston Martin, it's behind the Williams there, coming through the center S's now. I think I'm just about going to be able to come out ahead of them. It's Fittipaldi leading Alonso, and the gap in the end is only a few tenths to Fittipaldi there, actually. However, Fittipaldi obviously yet to pit, and you can see that as they start coming through the corners, he is really struggling through the corners. Obviously, he's in a Williams as well, and that is holding up Fernando Alonso a treat. And what that means is, I think I'm actually going to be able to hold on to this now. You know, Alonso, if Fittipaldi hadn't been there, would have been in my DRS range. He would have been piling pressure on me. I would have been coming under an immense amount of difficulty for the remainder of the race. You know, we're only halfway through at this point, and things are not nailed on. However, that has done a world of help for me. So my former teammate may be, you know, saying no hard feelings between me and him, and helping me out on my way to bagging P6 in this Constructors Championship. A victory is going to do absolute bits for that. And you can see as we come to the end of lap 19, onto the beginning of lap 20, Sergio Perez is into the pits, and we are going to retake the lead of the Brazilian Grand Prix once again. It's Fernando Alonso directly behind us, and then Bottas a little bit further behind, with Russell all the way up into P4. So he has had a fantastic Brazilian Grand Prix so far, and there's still an opportunity for him to get on the podium and maybe even get ahead of Fernando Alonso here. You can see as we move on to the end of lap 23 and the beginning of lap 24 that actually it is Fernando Alonso is not really gaining on us that much. I expected that he would be gaining a bit more than this, especially on the superior compound of tyre, but he's just not really doing it at the moment. So I actually think that we have a really good chance of winning this. However, one thing that I want you to keep an eye on over the course of this lap as we speed things up a little bit is the delta to Valtteri Bottas. You can see that it is growing initially, but actually over the course of the entire lap it is going to come down, and that was something that I did have to be concerned about, is whilst I was pulling away from Fernando Alonso, Valtteri Bottas seems to be a little bit faster than me over the course of a lap, so maybe we're not going to have things all our own way for the remainder of this race. Maybe, just maybe, Bottas, and by extension Russell as well, could be closing me down over the course of the race. That would not be the most unheard of thing in the world, definitely something that is potentially pretty likely, and so I need to keep my wits about me with these guys if I want to have any chance. We move a little bit further on through the race to lap 28, and Nick De Vries, who we saw at the beginning of the sprint, I said maybe he's going to have a good weekend. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be for De Vries, and once again he is retired here. Now, I remember he retired from the sprint in Qatar, and then shortly afterwards I also retired from the sprint in Qatar, so I'm hoping that we won't have a repeat of that here today. But, you know, maybe, just maybe we will. I'm not sure. We make our way through into lap 31 now. And you can see that actually the gap to Bottas is starting to stabilize a little bit. He's not really catching me any further. And so I think we have a really, really good chance of holding on to this this victory now. If he's not really catching me anymore, then we're doing well. One thing that I was keeping an eye on, even though I was leading the race, I was keeping an eye on the gap between Alonso and Russell, because obviously this is the championship fight right there, fighting for P3 and P4 on this occasion. If Russell can make up this position, he will take the lead of the championship. If he can't, then Alonso will take the lead of the championship. The gap will be just 3 points, I think, no matter what happens now, unless Leclerc can get past Alonso as well, or I guess ahead of Russell. But generally speaking, I don't think that there's going to be more than 3 points between either of them, and well, that is going to be exacerbated by this, which is Charles Leclerc running in that P5 position. He was having such a strong race. He had a really strong sprint, looking like he was going to get the podium. He's binned it of his own accord. It wasn't even a mechanical failure that did it. It was just him taking it too hot through a corner, much like he did in Zandvoort, and that is raced over for Charles Leclerc. And now as we come on to the final couple of laps, as you can see, I'm rounding the final corner onto the beginning of lap 35. There is basically nothing that can stop me now. Valtteri Bottas would have to catch me by 1.8 seconds per lap. No opportunity for a safety car. Honestly, I'm surprised that the Leclerc incident, it was only lap 34, yes. If it had been earlier in the race, it absolutely would have brought out a safety car. Yeah, I'm surprised it wasn't at least a VSC or something, because that was a mighty crash. Definitely left a bit of debris on the track as well. It really should have been more than nothing. But yeah, Charles Leclerc just spinning it under his own power. You don't see those too often in My Team career mode, where someone just crashes and it's an unforced error like that. But it does happen occasionally, not usually to someone as experienced and highly rated as Charles Leclerc, but on this occasion it does. Rounding the final few corners now into the last DRS zone, we have saved up plenty of battery. It's not going to be an issue. We've got fuel, we've got the tyres to get to the end. Everything is fine and dandy. And for the first time since the Canadian Grand Prix this year, we're going to cross the line to take victory. And it feels very sweet right now, especially knowing what's on the line. You can't make things more poetic than this. You know, we've had such a torrid run of form. You know, victories robbed from us, podiums robbed from us, and finally we get the win.
Battles around the historic curves of Interlagos today, and they've taken a fantastic win. Talk to me, Ant. What was it that set them apart from the competition today?
I feel like consistency was probably the key today. There's being quick, and then there's being quick lap after lap after lap. If you can do that, you can capitalise on other people's errors without making many of your own. And that's an approach that can push you a long way up the field.
A show-stopping performance from the three drivers approaching the podium right now. It's been an interesting Grand Prix, that's for sure.
Well, it is us on the top spot, and Valtteri Bottas came home in P2, unsurprisingly. But the one thing that maybe you saw, maybe you didn't before, George Russell taking the final step on the podium. He will take over the lead of the championship, and after an absolutely terrible start to the season for that Mercedes team, they have fully come back into this championship. And all of a sudden, it's looking like the defending world champion may defend his championship. After all, they gave him teeth, and that gave him his powers. And it's a win for us.
That's a positive result for George Russell, who further solidifies his position at the top of the standings. Let's see what effect this result has had on the drivers' standings. Some amazing talent out there on track today, but Anthony, who would you pick as your driver of the day?
I have to give it to Robinson.
It's time to check out the Constructors' standings. It was a tough race for our championship leaders, who lose ground at the top of the table. There was also a strong showing from the McLaren team today as they make their way up the standings. After an event like that, who knows what the sport has in store for us next time? Be sure to join us again as we continue to bring you the latest excitement in Formula One.
Well, this is a historic bottle job, quite frankly, coming out from Red Bull, because their development has slowed right down over the course of the season. At the beginning of the season, they were the ones to beat. It wasn't Aston Martin. Mercedes were nowhere at the beginning of the season, and all of a sudden, they've come through with two strong drivers, Bottas and Russell. They are somehow making this work. You know, they didn't really even get going until halfway through the season. I don't remember the first race that George Russell won, but it wasn't early on in the season. It was pretty late, if I remember correctly. You know, it was not till sort of round 8, round 9, that kind of thing, that he really started to actually get his arse in gear a little bit. You know, Valtteri Bottas, it took even longer. I don't remember the first race that he won, but it was beyond the halfway point of the season. So yeah, it's kind of surprising to me that not only are Red Bull now, both of their drivers are basically out of Drivers' Championship contention, despite the fact that Perez was in a commanding position and then Verstappen looked like he might potentially do it. You know, Verstappen is mathematically still in the fight, but I would wage to say that he's probably not going to get it, because if George Russell scores like another point, then Verstappen is going to be out of it again. So yeah, it's not what Red Bull would want whatsoever. Meanwhile, we're just 34 points off of Haas now in this Constructors Championship. Now I know what you're thinking. That's still a lot. It requires 2 P2s or a victory and a 5th place. That is what the requirement is going to be here, basically, in order to get P6 in the Constructors Championship. Now, Vegas, we obviously got a podium there last season, and it was a little bit of a fluke, I would say, but maybe, just maybe, there exists a chance of us doing it again, getting that magic in Vegas. Portugal, if we're getting pole positions in all of these races, you know, back to back to back to back to back, then I actually think that we have a good chance of doing it in Portugal and maybe converting that into the win as well. Obviously, if we have another mechanical failure this season, that's championship over. There will literally be nothing we can do at that point unless Dennis Hauger bags big points for us, which I'm sorry, Dennis. I think you've been very good this season for where the car is at. I just don't see him doing it, quite frankly. So I think I have to just put the team on my back in these last 2 races. Gun for the win in both of them if I can, but realistically we need to try and win one more race, or at least get a P2 in both races, which I feel like that's going to be harder. You know, winning one race, you can always have something crazy happen, especially in a race as red flag laden as the Las Vegas Grand Prix usually turns out to be. Something crazy can always happen, but 2 P2s requires me to exhibit a level of consistency I just don't think the car will allow me to do. So I know what the target has to be here. I think we have to try and gun for the win in Portugal. If we want to get this P6 in the Constructors Championship, we have to win the Portuguese Grand Prix. It is going to be really difficult, but you know, diamonds are formed under pressure, as they say. And that is going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed, please make sure you like and subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.